So let's go to this story now. Residents in some parts of Tshwane are outraged over the continued dry taps. The city has denied claims that the Mabopane, Atteridgeville and Centurion water supply was interrupted due to a power trip hit by a power trip that hit Rand Water's Palmiet booster pump station. However, the outraged residents are not convinced. Let's now unpack Tshwane's ongoing water crisis with the South African Water Chamber CEO, Benoit. Benoit, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. What is happening with our water boards and their relationship with the local municipalities? In this particular case, I'm speaking about the City of Tshwane, and then we'll broaden it up and speak about the other municipalities.
Sure, yes. So Rand Water provides most of the bulk water for Gauteng. Tshwane does have some other sources, but they're minimal. The system in general in Gauteng, in Joburg and Tshwane, not Ekurhuleni, is running at the reservoirs are running at 20 to 30%. So they're running very low, and they should be cycling between 60 and 80%, at least. And these are publicly weekly released graphs by Rand Water. And what that means is that the system is drawing more water than what Rand Water can provide. Now, Rand Water is providing adequate water. That's the first premise we need to understand. And they have a license to provide the volume of water that they're pumping at the moment. The issue is that in Tshwane, for example, which is not unlike the city of Johannesburg, is that they don't have 48 hours storage or residence time in their reservoirs, and their reticulation system is quite old. The previous mayor was quite amazed at 112, 113-year-old fittings that they found. These systems are designed for 40 to 60 years. So the reason why the demand is so high in Tshwane and Johannesburg is that the delivery system, so we call it the water reticulation system, so not the bulk, this is in actual fact needing to be rejuvenated and hasn't for the last 30 years received attention. Now, they should be spending a few billion a year in each of these metros, and Tshwane spends budgets about 120 million, which is absolutely inadequate. So what happens, the system is vulnerable as a result. So a minor trip for half a day, etc., should not affect you because you should have 2 days of storage. But because the system's only at 20 to 30%, what happens is that trip for half a day actually pushes the system, into a dry situation. And then what happens is it starts building up air in the system because it's dry now. And when you try and refill it, if you haven't maintained it, your air release valves aren't working properly, and air pockets have been reported as a problem by the city. And what happens is you actually land up putting mechanical strain or high pressure spikes into the system, and because it's vulnerable and old, it bursts. So, until they sort out the reticulation system in Tshwane very specifically at the moment, it's only going to get worse. And that's why the reservoir levels this year have been 20 to 30% the whole year, irrespective of summer or winter, which shows that it's actually not a citizen or weather or seasonal demand. It's the system that's just leaking like a bucket. That's basically what the issue is. Unfortunately, what happens is it's highly politicized. We see government change all the time in these metros, and they start pointing fingers at others. So the immediate one is you point at citizens and you point at your supply. Those are natural human reactions, but in actual fact, that's not the problem at all.
Yeah, I wonder to what extent does decisions that have been taken, for instance, to amalgamate some of the municipalities and create this mega municipality called the City of Tshwane. If you look at it in terms of landmass area, it is one of the biggest in the world, right there along the likes of New York as well as Yokohama in Tokyo. Is that, do we have a government system that is able to respond to this municipality that has such a huge land mass? And then on top of that also, it has the traditional land leaders as well that also have a stake to the land in that municipality and the impact that has on the provision of water.
So if you look at the intention was to have cross-subsidy between those who've got and those who haven't, and to alleviate poverty, whilst the spread of services was increased across the entire population. So when you do that, you need to, it makes sense to have a mega city because you have one set of urban planners, engineers, scientists, lawyers, technicians and the like. So you've got 1 cent of staff, and you're able to subsidize, as long as you get enough revenue, and subsidize those who can't afford to pay. So from that perspective, I think the ideology is not misplaced. Tokyo, with nearly 40 million people, has less than 2.5% leakage in their system. So it is a global best, but and it is a wealthier society, but not everybody is wealthy. So I don't think that's the problem. But if you budget 120 million a year for a city of 3 million, you're never going to catch up. You will fall over. And this is what we're seeing. They should be putting in, at the moment, they need to put in probably about 25 billion, very similar, because the networks for water is about 12,000 kilometers, like Johannesburg, although Joburg's got double the population. But as you said, it's very spread out. Tshwane is very spread out. I think if there were individual municipalities, they would be even in a worse position, because there would be no capacity in the poorer areas. So I think this idea of having a mega city or municipality is not a bad one, but we have not budgeted for 30 years. We haven't budgeted the right amount to put into those assets. The Auditor General has said you need to put upwards of 7.5% to try and catch up. Normally you would put in 2.5% to 4%. So of the asset value, and the asset value is around 100 billion in very round numbers in each of our metros in Gauteng.
Yep.
So it's very similar issues. But when your network's 100 years old, you can't expect it to perform. So little things like trips at Palmiet Power Station from Rand Water will cause a ripple effect, which results in major outages. It's exactly what's happening in Johannesburg.
Yeah, because the other part around it is also looking at some of the developments that are being given the green light, yet you don't have the bulk infrastructure that is actually able to accommodate those residents. But here's another one quickly on Hammanskraal. So a promise was made that there will be clean drinkable water in Hammanskraal by October. That deadline has been pushed down, and we are told that between the 1st until the 10th of November, there should be clean drinkable water in parts of Hammanskraal as part of phase 1. What is known about whether Hammanskraal does have that clean drinkable water as it stands now, today being the 12th?
So
or the 11th,
I've
sorry.
seen nothing. They've caught, the 11th. I don't see anything that they've actually caught up, but I think it's imminent. But the big question you've got to ask is the water reticulation distribution system in order? And I suspect if the production plants and the sewage plants were not in order there, that the reticulation system is in as a poor condition. So we're going to have these hundreds of millions are spent into a production plant to increase capacity and to try and provide clean water and to clean up the sewage plant that wasn't working. And it's just for half of it's going to leak through the system. So the residents are going to be quite unhappy if that is the case. And I don't see why it wouldn't be the case, because generally speaking, the municipality for 30 years has not spent anything near what it needs to keep that water distribution system in a reasonable state. So yeah, I think it's going to get quite hot out in Hammanskraal. The delays are because of geotechnical issues, and it was about a month delay.
Yeah.
So the plant's there, it's going to happen, it's imminent, so they're busy commissioning. So I don't think that's far away, but it'd be a bit pity to see if the distribution system doesn't perform.
Yeah. Quick other one, Benoit. So later on today, the Minister of Water and Sanitation, as well as the Deputy Minister for Water and Sanitation, alongside the Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, and the Mayor of the City of Joburg, is set to have a press briefing around the water crisis that has impacted the City of Joburg specifically. I just want to quickly play a clip from the interview that we just had with Premier Panyaza Lesufi, speaking about this crisis and the drastic action that would need to be taken. I'd like to hear what your response is to this. Just take a listen to what the Premier had to say a bit early on.
Yesterday, we convened an emergency meeting with the Mayor of Johannesburg and the Minister, because if we can't manage Johannesburg, 80% of the water that we have in our province, we're going to have difficulties. The system now is under severe pressure. And Rand Water made a presentation that, I must be honest, compels us to take drastic decisions in the next 48, 72 hours. If we can't take those drastic decisions, already we have seen so many people carrying buckets, so many people don't have water in some areas and the strategic centers. That's the situation that we have. And there are 3 areas that have caused this. Is overconsumption. We are consuming more than what is provided to us. Two is accountability of the water itself. There are lots of water that we can account for. And thirdly, is old infrastructure that needs to be overhauled and be either maintained. So the combination of the three has necessitated that we just have to review. We introduce level 1 restrictions. No one is adhering to them. And we need to reduce consumption.
Benoit, your reaction to that and also the suggestion that has been made by the city of Joburg to the Premier is to actually reduce the volume of water that is pumped out between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Do you think that that's the right solution?
So I don't think there's any choice. So what will happen is the systems will run dry and the water outages will increase because the reticulation system will burst as it is doing in Tshwane. You have to keep the system wet 100% of the time. It's not like electricity. It can't be on off. So unfortunately, having meetings and meetings and meetings restating the three causes that we know, and the biggest use of water is the non-revenue water. So it's the municipality is the biggest user and demand of water. It's not you and I or industry. So, until such time as there's political stability and that the right people are employed and put in the right positions and funding is secured, and the funding can only come, the majority of it, from the private sector. Johannesburg or Tshwane don't have the money, and the National Fiscus certainly doesn't have it. We're talking Joburg alone, 26 billion rand. We're talking about 50 billion rand just for the emergency in Gauteng for the leaking reticulation system. And meetings aren't going to help. You need to secure the funding, and to do that, you need to change the politics and need to change the accountability, definitely. And the municipality has to address its demand, and its demand is not the consumer. The consumer is not getting water, and it's getting it sporadically. So rationing the water is going to cause more outages because the system will go dry. So to try and manage it, it's actually quite an impossible situation to manage. We are past the tipping point, unfortunately. So now we have to get stuck in and replace kilometers and kilometers of pipework and not patch it. And those kilometers replaced will then last another 40 to 60 years. That's what we need to do. And we need to focus on what needs to be done to bring the money in to do that.
Yeah, but that's all about bulk infrastructure and whether we do have the money to do all of that. But what would your advice then be to residents right now? What is it that they should anticipate?
What we should, like energy, unlike energy, there's no alternative, but like energy, we need to be conscious. So, luckily the rains have come and, we shouldn't be watering lawns anyway. And we should, if we should try and cover those who can, the swimming pools, but it's not the majority of citizens who have swimming pools. So that's not really with the issues. We need to use showers instead of baths, for example. Industry reuses a lot of its water. It pinches its water. It reduces demands. Very efficient because it's expensive. It's roughly 40 rand in Joburg to buy it, another 40 rand to dispose of it as effluent or sewage. So the economics have driven those savings quite rapidly over the last 20 years. So at a household level, we need to be, I think, more conscious. And but we also need to have better information from the municipalities so that we can plan when we can wash, cook, and clean and things like that, because the economy can't stop. We need people to be able to function. So they need a minimum amount of water. So we have to become more water conscious. But it's very difficult for those who are relying on a tanker to reduce their water consumption.
Yeah, a final one, Benoit, from a national government perspective. Of course, we have Operation Vulindlela, and dealing with water is one of the aspects that they're going to be working on. But should water, as a critical commodity, a life-saving commodity at that as well, very, very important, still remain in the hands of municipalities?
I don't believe it should. I've been on record. We should have source to tap. In other words, a utility which is non-municipal. This is how most of the world operates, especially in water scarce areas, so that you have one supply chain, and that supply chain ensures that its network and its assets are well maintained, and it purchases money from the national entity, which is the water trading entity. And this is going to be launched. It was supposed to be last week, a slight delay. In a special purpose vehicle, we can ring fence the funds in Mfuleni with Rand Water, and that is exactly a source to tap. So Rand Water in this special purpose vehicle will be collecting the money, not the municipality. So it doesn't mean municipal people will lose their jobs. They will be incorporated into these entities, but you have a single point of responsibility, and the national government has to regulate that. That's its role as a custodian. So I think we're heading towards that. And that also makes it, if the funds are ring-fenced, it makes it easier for the private sector and pension funds and like to invest into what is a commodity that people will always need. So the risk is relatively low, but going through municipality, it's high because we know that the money is not necessarily used for where it's supposed to do, and also money is not well collected. So when it's in a special purpose vehicle, that utility will collect the money and use the money for that purpose alone. So it has a higher chance of success. We've been saying this for quite a while, and I think this proof of concept will really prove to be the right way to go. You can expect political pushback, but laws are able to be passed, and there might be constitutional change because municipalities are water service authorities. The metros are water service authorities in their own entities, and then the district municipalities. So that might have to be revisited. So it's quite a dynamic thing, but I don't think we need to necessarily upset the apple cart too much. We just need to operate in an entity that has a single point of responsibility and depoliticize it. So it's a utility, public, privately owned, and can perform its duties. Unfortunately, it's going to take us 5 to 10 years to get all this money in and to do the work in the areas it needs to. We can't do it all at once. It has to be done progressively. So we have to be really, really water-wise and make this complex architecture simple to manage.
Yeah, and keep the water mafia out as well. Thank you so much for your time. Benoit Leroy is the CEO of the South African Water Chamber.